For many people, the month of June means beautiful weather and it's vacation time. But for Ohio State coaches, they're preparing to host not only numerous football camps, but to also host official visits for numerous recruits from around the country. John Garcia Jr. is back with us to help us get ready for what will be a really busy month.
You are Locked On Buckeyes, your daily podcast on the Ohio State Buckeyes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Buckeye fans? Welcome back to another episode of Locked On Buckeyes for the Locked On Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jay Stevens, also the host of the Jay Stevens Podcast. It is Wednesday, June 1st in the year 2022, and I want to thank you for making Locked On Buckeyes your first listen or first watch of every single day. On today's episode, John Garcia Jr. is back with us. And this month is going to be really, really busy. And I couldn't think of anybody else I would want to have on the podcast to help us prepare for an extremely busy month than John Garcia Jr. John will not only help us learn about what we will witness during this month, but we'll also discuss a couple recruits as well, Jayden Bonsu and Darien Goulet. So I'm going to back away. Let's bring in John. I know you want to hear from him and hear what John had to say about not only camping season, the official visits we'll witness, but also these three really, really talented young men. The month of June is going to be really, really busy for Ohio State football coaches as they will be hosting numerous one-day football camps, a 7-on-7 competition, and other things for numerous high school athletes around the country. And here to help prepare us for that and also discuss a couple more high school recruits is John Garcia Jr. of Sports Illustrated. John, welcome back.
Good to be on with you, Jay. June is going to be crazy across the college football landscape. A lot of camps, as you said, official visitors. So inevitably commitments are going to go down as well. So the Buckeyes will certainly make their own play. But a lot coming up the next few weeks. So excited.
From your experience covering the recruiting circuit and the cycle, how busy and hectic is this month for you?
It's pretty good, man. There's a lot of events that are big by themselves, in addition to college camps, and we'll certainly hit some on behalf of SI. But Elite 11 is at the end of June. There's a big tournament in Vegas for overtime and Cam Newton. The second week of June, Manning Passing Academy, where a certain quarterback will be spinning it later this month as well. So June is pretty hectic. We're expecting a lot of commitments, a lot of travel, but at the end of the day, we get to see a lot of football, and to do that anytime in the summer is a blessing. So we're excited.
Ohio State, as I recently saw, they have 6 one-day camps. These are all the football camps that Ohio State's hosting. 6 one-day camps. They also have a 7-on-7 competition that's for one day. They have one day for high school athletes, one day for middle school athletes. And then for the one-day football camps, they break it up. They have the big men in the morning, the skill positions in the evening. A great way for them to look at a lot of linemen on both sides of the ball, and then also linebacker. Well, I think linebackers would technically be skill, kind of, because you're still going to be in that 7-on-7 category. But it's a great time for them to look at a lot of athletes. And I remember this time, John, I remember it was Will Smith Jr., the son of Will Smith Sr., former Ohio State Buckeye, who got his first look in front of Ohio State coaches during the month of June, took a visit to Ohio State during the season, ultimately committed to be a Buckeye, I believe, in the fall. These are the types of things that I do believe is going to be huge for this month. You talk about the Manning Passing Academy and the Elite 11, but there's numerous athletes around the country that this is their chance, this is their opportunity to get in front of these coaches, to potentially get offers from them at a time that they might not be on the radar of some of these coaches. They get on campus, get coached up by guys like Larry Johnson. The next thing you know, an offer is right there for them, and they commit to a school that they would love to play at.
There's no doubt. This is the bubble time of year, I like to say, because if you are on a certain bubble, you can enhance your value and climb up the board. So if you are on the offer bubble where they're like, we like them, we don't know if we love them, you come compete and you get into the love category. Or if you're a kid who already has an offer, but they don't know if it's committable, right? Do you have the green light to commit? A camp performance in a positive direction can create that green light. And then certainly in extreme cases, Jay, like you said, it could be a kid, getting on radar for the very first time at a camp like what Ohio State puts together. So there's a lot of movement that these camps create, and then they're validators as well, right? These coaches can actually, like you said, Larry Johnson can physically watch the jump off of the ball that a Kenyatta Jackson gets off of the snap, and kind of say, okay, this validates some of what we see on tape. So there's a lot of movement that can be created through the camps. And I think it's important to note that it's not just with the senior class. If anything, it's tailor-made for the junior class, that class of 2024. This is really, you talk about needing to prove where you're at. This is where we start to see that group where that cream rises to the top through this offseason, because they're going into their junior years and becoming alphas in recruiting, and these camp settings provide some of that grounds to prove themselves a little bit more. There'll certainly be some movement in 23, especially with the official visits and all that, but the camps and the offers and all that stuff, that might be more relegated to 24, though we will see it a little bit in this 23 class as well. So again, it's a great time of year. It's a time for movement, fluidity, and building on that bubble that you're in.
Not only is the month of June going to be busy because of the football camps we have discussed, but you're going to get a lot of athletes that are going to be taking their official visits during the month of June. We'll talk about one of them here in a second that just recently announced it or scheduled his official visit to be in Columbus this month. But numerous athletes, now these are just not the 2024 kids, but also 2023 kids that are just saying, I want to take my visit before the season starts, potentially going to be making a commitment before their senior year of football, which I think is wise. It's also wise to wait. So there's wisdom in everything going on. But this is busy, not just for the football stuff that with the camps, but John, also a lot of official visits will be taking during this month.
Yeah, I think this June, Jay, will be the busiest June we've ever seen from an official visit perspective in recruiting, because it used to really be relegated towards the fall, right? It was about taking official visits during game day weekends, where you could, get that fan experience, and then of course get that intimate time with the coaching staff Saturday night into Sunday. And that's still going to happen, but like you said, a lot of these kids are moving it up because they want to make decisions before their senior year begins. So June is where the window is back open. So we're literally a day away from that. And basically, as soon as the calendar turns over to June, you're going to see droves of official visitors, particularly on those weekends where these schools are really prioritizing a lot of top recruits. So yeah, we're going to see a lot of top fives that these kids are going to put out, or bigger groups where the official visits will actually tell us who the top schools are, because you're going to spend more time at the schools that you're most interested in. So it is a critical time for Ohio State to identify talent in camps. And like you said, maybe close on some, but really to push for official visitors and knock those visits out of the park. So that way you're better positioned to land commitments, because yeah, they're coming soon, basically, no matter how you slice it.
We are here with John Garcia Jr. of Sports Illustrated, talking about a busy month of June with the football camps Ohio State will be hosting, then also the official visits. But as we talk about official visits, there's one young man, I believe his name is Jayden Bonsu, a safety, 6'2", 205. He recently scheduled his official visit to be in the month of June 17th through the 19th. He will also be visiting Miami, Michigan State. Ohio State is a third visit, and then also visiting Texas the 24th through the 26th of this month. A safety, 6'2". I like the height already, I like the size of 200 pounds already in high school. What can you tell us about this young man?
Yeah, Bonsu does a little bit of everything. He's all over the field for St. Peter's Prep, which is one of the better schools in the state of New Jersey. He's probably the best DB to come from there since Minkah Fitzpatrick, which was a do-it-all defensive back type. And you see a little bit of similarities. Now, I don't want to put him in the Minkah category just yet, because that's, all-American, first round, all of that. But, Bonsu shows some of those traits in that he can do a little bit of everything. You notice the frame, as you said, 6'2". Minka's not 6'2", by the way. So he's got a broad shouldered frame, and he brings physicality with it. It's not just for show. He can really come downhill and strike an opponent, but there's also a lot of natural athleticism in his game. A kid who's really comfortable in coverage. He's got some pick sixes littered on his highlight tape, and you could just see the sheer playmaking ability of what Bonsu brings. And you I think in 3 different plays you'll get him blitzing off the edge with a sack, returning an interception for a touchdown, or just striking somebody in the hole, and then pushing them back. So you get a lot of dynamic playmaking from Bonsu, and again, it's against the run and the pass. So when you attach playmaker to a kid like that, it certainly means a lot in this day and age. He's comfortable in space. He's just mature. I mean, he looks like he's in college right now. So you could see why it's become a national battle for a kid like that. But yeah, Ohio State's, I mean, right in the thick of it, maybe even near the top of it as things stand. I think going into those official visits, I think Ohio State, Georgia, Miami could be kind of that emerging group, but he's going to check out other schools, as you mentioned. So that could be something to watch. But the Buckeyes have been in play here for quite some time. And we know by the foundation of this class, they're going to take a pretty big class of defensive backs. And I don't think many are higher on the board than Bonsu.
I do believe that with how Ohio State's transitioning their defense and some of their 4-2-5, at least position-wise, how it was last year, will maybe be a little different this year. Bonsu sounds like a player that can be a multiple position guy at the defensive back position, which I realize more so on offense and defense. Ryan Day loves that. On the offensive line, you can play inside or outside, guard versus tackle. He likes those type of guys. Guards that can play guard or center, he likes them. Receivers that can play slot or outside. And even at the DB position, can you play free? Can you play strong? Can you play nickel safety, nickel corner? Which one suits you best, or can you be interchangeable? Ryan Day loves those. Jim Knowles loves those guys on defense. And from what you said about Bonsu so far, he sounds like somebody that his versatility can be utilized wherever he plays college football.
Yeah, I think he's a kid who's big and physical enough to where you could say, hey, go in the box and be an extra rover or linebacker type, and we'll be okay. But he's also got this athleticism and instinctual game where he can really sit back and play coverage. So I think that lends you to some nickel possibilities, certainly different types of safety responsibilities relative to the drops and where they're positioned. So yeah, I could see him moving around throughout an Ohio State secondary at the next level for sure. And again, he's got the frame to do that as well at 6'2", 200 pounds.
So when I look at these names, and I got these schools and the dates from a graphic that he actually tweeted out on Twitter a few days ago, I see Michigan State, I see Miami, I see Texas. 3 schools that are not currently in the landscape of where Ohio State currently is, but they're trying to get to that spot. Miami is doing some good things down there in South Florida. Mel Tucker in Michigan State, almost said a different coach's name, is doing great things there in East Lansing. But Texas is another one where it seems like they keep falling, or almost say falling. They cannot get to where they want to be. It's been a struggle for over a decade to get back to where they were when they had Colt McCoy, Vince Young, those types of quarterbacks there. With Ohio State, you've already said Ohio State might already have the upper hand, but just by the name recognition, there might be some Buckeye fans and some non-Buckeye fans, John, that might say, well, the Buckeyes have the upper hand already simply because of their name.
Yeah, that's a great point. You know, he did visit Georgia a couple weeks ago unofficially. So
Okay.
you wonder if Georgia starts to push. That's a school that feels like it should be recruiting against an Ohio State, and it certainly is doing that all over in this class of 2023. But yeah, there's a lot of different cells going on in college football these days. And I think his list is a good example, right? You know, a lot of upstarts in that group. You know, I think Michigan State is probably on a nice upward trajectory from a perceptional standpoint. Ohio State's kind of already there. And then Miami and Texas are trying to say, hey, you know, we've got these great brands. They just haven't been so great lately. So they're trying to get back there. So their selling point is, hey, come be a part of this climb that we're going to make with or without you. So you can start to build some cells from different perspectives on a list like that. But, for me, if I'm a Buckeye fan, I feel good today. I'm curious about Michigan State, right? Because he's in the Big Ten footprint of being a New Jersey kid. So that will probably resonate with him. But I got my eye on Georgia. Do they start to push? Where are they in this conversation? And it could be another safety in the state of in the region, I should say, Jonel Aguero, who could start to influence some of that, because he's a guy Ohio State is high on, but he's also high on Georgia, Miami, and some of these same schools that we're talking about with Bonsu. So I do think that there's a little bit of a pecking order there, and it starts to make you wonder how many spots are there for safeties, even though we think Ohio State's going to bring in several. They've already got multiple DBs committed, and they're in on a bunch more. So does that push someone to make a decision sooner than he's maybe thinking about right now? Or do these spots get taken and you maybe have to say no thanks to a pretty good player? So there's a lot of business decisions that are going down on both sides of this thing. So he's interesting to watch no matter what.
We are here with John Garcia Jr. of Sports Illustrated, talking about and discussing a busy, busy month in the month of June via the football camps that the school will be hosting, also the official visits. Jayden Bonsu, we just discussed him. He's a young man that's going to be visiting Ohio State later this month. Then there's another young man in Darien Goulet, a linebacker who recently announced his top 7, not 6 or 5 or 4, top 7. These numbers always interest me because I'm like, how do you get to 7? I've seen 8 before. I've seen 10. But this young man, Darien Goulet, recently released his top 7. Ohio State is in the mix. A linebacker standing at 6'2", 220. Down in Texas. Texas is in his top 7, but another school just like Jayden Bonsu, Ohio State's battling with Texas for another really talented young man.
Yeah, this one feels different though, right? Because the kid's from Texas, so you kind of
Right.
understand a little bit more why Goulet has the Longhorns still in the mix. But like you said, a top 7, but he's starting to set official visits. Not all 7 can get them. Ohio State will get one. So you gotta get a bit of a preview of what that pecking order really looks like when the official visits start to get set up. So certainly the Buckeyes are in the middle of the conversation here. And this is another interesting, versatile prospect. Not only is he a linebacker with some modern traits and abilities to play in space, but he's a great offensive player as well. And I think you talked about what Ryan Day looks for. He loves two-way guys. And I think running back to linebacker is one of those seamless conversion positions, right? If you're a great linebacker, you're probably a pretty good running back if it came down to it, because a lot of those principles carry over from one side of the ball to the other. And you see it on the tape when you watch Goulet. You see the vision, kind of the instincts take over, and then the physicality comes behind it because he's 6'2", 220, like you mentioned. But he runs really well. Again, a kid who I think is just scratching the surface in terms of what he will be relative to the modern asks of a linebacker, because I've said it on this show before. If you're a linebacker, what are you doing on third down? That is how you're now measured by. Are you coming off the field for a DB, or can you rush the passer, or can you drop into coverage? I think Goulet can rush the passer or drop into coverage. He has that kind of athleticism, and I think that is invaluable in today's game, and that's why he's got a national offer list coming out of the state of Texas. So that one is probably a little bit harder to figure out in terms of who's in the best shape. But we know Ohio State's right in the thick of it. They're getting an official visit. Those two factors will continue to line up and support those possibilities of him joining the Buckeyes. And look, there's been a lot of success in Texas. I know we've talked about that together, right? The Buckeyes can go down to Texas and get an elite prospect almost at will. So it's not something to perceptionally say, well, he's from Texas, so probably not. Don't do that if you're a Buckeye fan listening to this one, because they've shown time and time again that they can go down there and not only compete for recruits, but actually win.
We talk about how he can be a versatile linebacker, maybe interchangeable between running back and linebacker right now. Some of those principles go back and forth. This is more me personally, John, I love guys that are multi-sport athletes in high school, middle school, a lot of that cross-training you get where you're not doing the same drills every single day. But from the basketball court to the football field, you can You can prepare your body. A lot of guys that do football, they do track and field, either from the shot put discus or even from the running long distance or even short distance, the sprints and things like that. Maybe you play baseball. Maybe you play hockey. I mean, one of those weird sports, but a lot of these things cross-training, they work together. And I did see this young man, he plays basketball. I don't know if he's still playing, but I know he's played in high school. And he also threw a 43-foot, 0-inch shot put as a sophomore. Those two things there. Now, the 43 feet at the shot put, that shows a little bit of explosion. I've seen that explosion come through on the football field, but also the basketball. That could be where he's able to feel comfortable quickly at linebacker, a little bit better in coverage, run stopper, edge guy. If you want to have him cover the slot a little bit, he could do that as well. All these things we see from him doing things in other sports, I have quickly seen from the clips I have seen of him play, they translate to the football field.
100%. I think basketball and track are the two most popular secondary sports for football players, and they both have so much crossover. Track is pretty self-explanatory, but with basketball, I mean, you talk about footwork and body control, things that are just paramount on the basketball court are becoming more important in football, because what is the term or the phrase that we're joking about with football? It's basketball on grass, right? And it's for a reason, because you need to play in space. You're moving laterally more than ever before. The game is widening out, right? It's not two tight ends, a fullback, and an I formation, and you're just going. No, it's wide out, 4-5 wide. There's a motion. It's really designed to stress you laterally. So that's a foundational principle in playing basketball, particularly on defense. So that's where you see so much easy to see translation. And obviously body control at any position is really important. But when you're trying to deal with running backs and players in space, slot receivers, tight ends, you better have good body control. You better have a good foundation and core, because you're going to be redirecting quite a bit. So all of those principles really do carry over. And I think an underrated basketball, translatable trait is just the conditioning, especially when it's a bigger guy, right? You talk about a linebacker, a lineman, a tight end, these guys being able to play big minutes for their high school basketball teams says a lot about their conditioning and probably something about their competitiveness as well. So on the surface, those things are absolutely boxes that are checked. And it also tells you that, he's not specializing in one sport, so he's certainly not a finished product. He might not have some of those bad habits that come with being a finished product either. So he's right there where he's a little bit raw overall athletically, but relative to the position you're projecting and his athletic background and his frame, you can start to piece that together and make a big time Power 5 linebacker that's built for this day and age where you are playing in space and or rushing the passer. So, it's like the more you talk about him, the more you kind of like this kid.
Yeah, I didn't do this earlier, but we did discuss Ohio State and Texas being in its top 7. The other 5 schools that are in this group: Texas A&M, Alabama, Florida, Miami, and Oklahoma. The Miami one's interesting to me because I do know they are trying to not just build something via the recruiting trail and transfer portal, but literally monetarily, because I've heard that they're building a new football facility down there in South Florida. But Miami is quickly becoming that school where they're trying to do what they did 20, 25, 30 years ago as being that school in Florida where, one, they're running the state, but they're also being a school that's trying to, well, not really running the state back then because Florida State was really good, Florida really good as well during portions of that. But they're really trying to get back into that national championship conversation in adding, if it were possible for them to add a man like Darien Goulet to that team, it would be huge. But I do think we're going to see more of a Buckeye Hurricane type of battle on the recruiting trail, not just right now, but over the next 3 to 5 years. I do expect the Buckeyes in Miami to really battle for guys where at one time Ohio State got both Bosa brothers. That battle might be a lot harder over the next 3 to 5 years.
Yeah, well, we definitely are going to see more, Buckeyes and Miami battles. We know Ohio State's been so prevalent in the state of Florida, and particularly South Florida, as you mentioned, the Bosa brothers coming from Fort Lauderdale. There's a lot of South Florida targets for the Buckeyes right now that are uncommitted in this class at 23. Brandon Ennis comes to mind immediately. Already got Fletcher committed at running back. Damon Fagan comes to mind as well. There's a bunch of others that could very well end up in Columbus, and you've done so well in the state of Florida. I didn't check the commitment list today, Jay, but I think there's still more Floridians than any other state represented for the Buckeyes commitment list. So it tells you a lot about the Buckeyes realizing where talent is and going in with that ability to compete. But over time, Miami's going to be better in South Florida. They only signed like one South Floridian last cycle, which to me is part of the reason why.
That's wild, man.
Part of the reason why that coaching staff was fired. I don't see that continuing under Mario Cristobal. But look, it's not just them, right? I mean, Georgia's gone down to South Florida consistently, Alabama, Clemson. So Texas A&M is becoming a player in South Florida. So it's truly heavyweight recruiting down in Miami, just like it is in Atlanta, just like it is in other big metros, Dallas, Houston, LA, especially, as time goes on here, because some of these if you want to win, you got to recruit nationally. It's real simple. I can go on all day about it, but if you want to win a national title, regardless of what school you are, you have to recruit nationally, even if you're Georgia with great players in your backyard. That LSU team was littered with kids from outside of Louisiana a couple years ago. Same thing for Alabama 2 years ago. It's just a part of the modern game. You have to recruit nationally, regardless of where you're from. And Ohio State was one of the early adopters of that philosophy. And that's why, to me, they've been able to stay on top from a talent perspective relative to almost anyone else.
John, this has been fun. Look forward to it next week where you get to come back on, get to discuss some more things that have actually happened on the field, via football camps or official visits being taken, maybe some commits as well. I know you'll be busy. We'll be busy. Thank you, John, for coming back on the podcast. I really appreciate it.
Always a pleasure, Jay. Thanks for having me.